Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to join. I think there's a few more people joining as we speak, so bear with us. Okay, I think we can get going now. And so thanks everyone for joining our webinar today around total workforce management. And today we're really going to be focusing on the technology trends impacting the workforce today, and what does today's workforce really look like in terms of permanent employees and external employees. And then what really is total workforce management and how to implement a total workforce strategy. So hopefully you find the webinar useful. And now I want to hand over to the two people kicking off the session. So we have Tim Ringo on the line, who is the Vice President for HR Advisory Leader for EMEA and MEE. And we also have Jamie Merkovich, who is our Pre-Sales Director for EMEA and MEE too. So let me hand over to Jamie first, and she can introduce herself.
Great, thanks, Laura. Thanks for joining everyone today. I'm Jamie Merkovich. I work at SAP Fieldglass, and I've actually been in the total workforce management space, aligning with customers on their strategic programs for over 15 years now, with a focus on technology over the last 10 years throughout the EMEA and MEE regions, as you see on the page here. And we'll be helping to talk us through some of the agenda points today. And with that, I'll hand it over to my co-host, Tim Ringo.
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, it's Tim Ringo here. My background is nearly 30 years in HR transformation consulting. I was at Accenture for 16 years, at IBM for 5, and I've been working here in SuccessFactors for about 5 years now. So I've architected and led some of the largest HR transformations in global companies. So I've seen all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm very pleased to be here today on this subject. I think it's very, very relevant, which is, how do we look after our external workforces as well as we look after our internal workforces. So it's a very interesting topic. So looking forward to today. So we're going to kick off with the first bit of content. So I think it's just worthwhile putting everything into a bit of context in terms of what's going on in the world. It's almost not correct to call these trends, because these are things that are actually happening now. These are sorts of things that put into context what our workforces, external or internal, and our organizations are facing. If you look up in the far right corner, you'll see a French chap there called Philippe, who took the world's first selfie in 1836. You can kind of see his left shoulder is hidden because he's reaching around to the side to push a bulb so that it takes a picture of him. So that was the world's first selfie. So just to put that in context, between 1836 and January 2016, there were estimated to be 2.7 trillion, that's trillion with a T, images taken over that period of time. Between January 2016 and January 2018, there were 3.4 trillion images taken. So in 1 year, just a couple of years ago, we had nearly doubled the amount of images that were taken across all of time in 1 year. And that trend continues. It's absolutely massive. We're looking to get close to 5 trillion images taken this year and put up on the internet, which is absolutely astonishing, which kind of leads in then to some of the points as to why that's happening. So during 2018, we're going to see 205 billion mobile app downloads across the world. So you can see that's many, given we're at about 7 or 8 billion people in the world, that's multiple mobile app downloads for each person. We're currently at 2.6, heading towards 3 billion social network users, so nearly everybody in the world will be on, is on or will be on social networks very soon. 5.4 billion web-enabled devices like tablets and phones. That's nearly one per person around the world. And then if we look at something that kind of sits very much in the background that we don't see very much, but there's 8.3 billion devices connected to the internet, which we now call the Internet of Things. So it's things that are connected to the internet that we don't even see. For instance, my wife has bought a refrigerator that's actually smarter than I am. It's connected to the internet all the time, and it orders milk and eggs and those sorts of things for us, and it just shows up on Friday. So, there's no conscious effort there for us, but that's really where there's massive growth of these devices that are connected all the time that we don't know about. And another very fast-growing area, which you probably all will be aware of, is there's now heading towards 1 billion voice-capable AI devices. So that would be your Amazon Echoes, your Google Homes, those sorts of things. Where at home, very much we're starting to talk to our devices. We're talking to our mobile phones. We're talking to our devices. So and it's looking at this will double. We'll head towards 2 billion by 2021. So if you think about the technology, just the size of these things. So 2.7 trillion images, 5 trillion images. I mean, it's just astonishing amount of data that's washing around out in the world. It's almost incomprehensible for humans. The numbers are so big. So let's look at some of the things that are actually starting to impact workforces today, and this is both internal and external, and we'll put those in context for you today. So the first thing, the first one is it's really a subject that was driven, no pun intended, by a book called Drive by Daniel Pink. So it's Drive, D-R-I-V-E. It was essentially a piece of work done about 5 or 6 years ago that showed that what we think motivates people historically, so the carrot and stick, we pay people more, they'll work harder, actually doesn't work. If you are a knowledge worker, which 70 to 80% of us are, the worst thing you can do is the carrot and stick approach, which is big bonuses and those sorts of things, which essentially is moving to the next point here, which is we're reconceptualizing rewards and compensation, where we're starting to mix in giving shares to people rather than bonus, give people learning or allow them to go get master's degrees, those sorts of things. So we're rethinking and redoing how we compensate and reward people, because humans are very driven by their intrinsic motivation. So why do they get up in the morning and go work for you? It's really interesting and very, very powerful to tap into that. So that's why you hear a lot about purpose-led organizations and trying to create organizations where people are very motivated and connected to the purpose of the organization. So what motivated people in the past, back in the early Industrial Revolution, has changed dramatically because of the type of work we do, and therefore we need to change how we reward and compensate people. And those are two things that are changing very rapidly. The next thing to think about is the emerging workforce. So as of 2020, which is only a year and a month away, for the first time in human history, we're going to have 6 generations in work at once. We're going to have 17-year-olds through to 70, even 80-year-olds in work. In fact, the fastest growing workforce demographic in the Western world is people who are 70 and plus. So it was 14% a couple of years ago making up the workforce. By 2020, it's going to be nearly 27% of the workforce is going to be people 70 years old or older. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, people are living a lot longer. They're healthy a lot longer. And they desire to work and stay engaged. In fact, many studies are showing that people who work into their 70s have a very good chance to make it to their 90s, even 100s. So it's actually very good for you to stay in work. But the way that that's being done, 70-year-olds may not work 5 days, 6 days a week. They may work 3 days a week. We'll have to change how we recruit and bring in people that are from anywhere from 17 to 70. So that emerging workforce is changing rapidly. And then layered across that is rising ethnicity. So workforce is becoming much more diverse in terms of gender, ethnicity, those types of things. So the workforce is very much starting to look like the world in general. The next step, which kind of builds on what we're talking about, the retirement of traditional retirement. So, what does retirement mean anymore? Back in, the baby boomers days, that meant they worked from 22 until about 54, 56. and then they were supposed to retire. The fact is, a lot of baby boomers are staying in work today, and they're working well into their 60s. So what does retirement really mean now? In a lot of cases, it means you stop one career and you start another one. So, for instance, Barclays in the UK about 3 years ago started a new program to bring 55-year-olds and older into the workforce. So they would retrain you to be an investment banker. You would just have to be 55 or older and promise them that you'd work for 10 years. And the reason they had to do this is because they couldn't get young people to come in to be investment bankers because it was seen as somewhat unethical. So they've had to look at other demographics. And so it's been a very, very popular program. Most of the main investment banks in the UK now use a similar program where they're bringing people in who have retired or about to retire and retrain them for a new career. Some other things that are overtaking us at the moment. So well-being at work, well-being at home. So a lot of companies have started these programs where it's shown that the more you look after someone's well-being, the more productive they're going to be at work. So you see a lot of programs around encouraging people to sleep properly, encouraging people to exercise, and companies providing funds or programs to help people be as well at work as they are at home. In fact, the two really mix. If you're well at home, you're going to be very well at work as well, and you're going to be more productive. So it's an area that's becoming very, very popular. Started out in the U.S. and is now sort of coming through Europe as well. The next trend, so machines take over, and we've all seen this. So very, very soon, we're on the verge of having driverless cars running around London. We see robots in the grocery store where we do our own self-checkout. And, you know, it's been shown over time that every time there's been a major technology inflection, it is absolutely true, a number of people lose their jobs. But in reality, what happens is very, very short period of time after that, you actually see humans have more jobs and more interesting jobs. So you see these inflections over time. And, you know, machines taking over more and more of the work has actually created more interesting and more work for humans in the future. So you can go back to the cotton gin era when people used to pick and strain cotton by hand. That was then done by a machine, and those people obviously was very tough at the time, but they moved on and did different things. So that happens, you know, it's happened over 200 years now, over and over again. So just the machines taking over sounds like a negative trend, but it's actually a positive trend because it allows people to do different and more interesting work. The next point around collaboration and social. So we all heard back in, you know, sort of 1999, 2000 that e-learning was going to change everything. Well, it didn't change anything. All people did was take content and put it on in PowerPoint and put it online, and that wasn't very effective. But what is changing learning are collaboration and social networks, where the real way that humans learn is by contacting other humans and learning from them, and that's proving to be very, very effective in organizations and using collaboration and social networks for training and learning, which is improving learning outcomes dramatically. The last point, and I think it's actually one of the most important points, and many of you may be aware, you've seen headlines probably, but ever since about 2002, human productivity has actually been declining at work, which is interesting because at home our human productivity is actually gone up because of the gadgets and technology we have. At work it's had the opposite effect. There hasn't been the investment in new technology, new hardware, software, et cetera, that there has been for people at home. And because of that, it's actually creating what we call a productivity paradox, where technology is racing ahead of us, but organizations are not reorganizing or investing in that technology. So if you think about it, work in 2018 still looks very like 1997. You go in, there's a PC on the desk, it's connected to a printer, you're using a mouse, you know, those sorts of things. Well, that's what work looked like in 1997, so it's probably not any surprise that productivity is not going up. We're not enabling the technologies, the smart technologies that are coming in. So with that, I want to just do a bit of interactivity here. And ask you, sorry, I need to go backwards. Sorry, I had a couple more trends. Just a couple more trends. So experience at work, digital at home. So just as I was saying a moment ago, this is what needs to change. We're very digital at home. We're very technology proficient at home. Work needs to start to look like home. And a lot of organizations, you'll hear CEOs and senior executives saying we want to Facebookize, or we want to, you know, make our internal applications look like Facebook. The last trend is an important one, which is from big data to smart data. Big data is not a good thing. It's too much data. It's too much to take in. It's hard to get insights from that. But smart data is looking at very few things and gleaning insights from that. It's much more powerful. And that's why we're moving from big data to smart data, and particularly around workforce planning as well. So I want to do a little bit of interactivity here, as I was saying a moment ago, and I want to do a poll here. And I want to find out, first of all, out of all the trends I just spoke about, which one, and just choose one, but which one worries you the most? And then in a moment, I'm going to ask you which one excites you the most. Let's focus on which one concerns you the most. So I've put this poll up here. If you guys can click one of these, and if you just scroll down, you'll be able to see all the trends I spoke about. Choose one and then submit, and we'll see some results in a moment. So I'll give you a moment to review those. Which trend concerns you the most? So if you choose one, let's have a look at the results. It's interesting. It's spread fairly evenly, but it looks like the productivity crisis. I think you all are agreeing with me. I totally agree. I think that's one of the most concerning trends coming forward. It is something we have to solve. The good news is later on in this talk, we're going to give you some ideas of what the solution may look like around solving the productivity crisis. Now let's have a bit more positive view, and have you choose one that you think is the most interesting, the one that most excites you. So go ahead and choose one. You probably don't want to choose the same one that you chose before. So this one should be the one that excites you the most. Let's check the results here. Okay, so the productivity paradox is the lowest one there, so that shows that we have a different view here. Interesting, so it looks like it's close to 30% around collaboration and social networking in an organization, which is very, very interesting. I think there's huge amounts of potential there. So hopefully you can see all that. So people aren't too concerned or too excited about the machines taking over, but that's okay. Very good. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Jamie now. I hope that sets the stage for some interesting discussion going forward. So Jamie, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, some interesting output from the polls there. And, as we've been focusing on, technology really has a big impact on our daily lives, as we know, both in our homes and in our offices. We want to take a moment and just think about the current state of your own organization, the company that you're working in, and what are the capabilities that technology is providing you today versus what are the actual capabilities of the technology that you might have access to. A lot of our organizations are still having to collect a lot of different information from various different sources. Some parts of a process or the operations are handled quite manually. Think about how many different systems you even need to log into or access every day just to get your day-to-day jobs done. And ultimately, the experiences that you have. We all know that the impact of these things can be quite significant. And, the more time consuming it is to try and put all this information together and get from point A to point B, and if you have a great experience versus a really poor experience, really starts to shape the feelings and the emotions and the alignment that you have with the people across your organization and how they feel about your company and the brand that you have. But at SAP, we really are starting to focus on how can we leverage our technology to better enable our customers. We want to really help you advance and move forward into the future. And therefore, we're really focusing on 3 key areas to do so. The first is really around that big data, but making it smart and giving you better insights to what's happening now, what's happened in the past, but also to start to be able to predict what might be happening next. So we all know that big data has been talked about for a long time, and there's lots of different ideas of what to do with it. But we actually now have technologies where we can start to store, data mine, and provide extracts of useful insights to our customers. And the power of our platforms also provide this information in a real-time, automated manner. And that's a huge difference to our customers. In the past, you might be waiting days or weeks to receive reports and combined information and try and make sense of it all. And you might also have challenges trying to normalize data to ensure that you're comparing like for like across your various different departments or aspects of your organization. And we're starting to actually leverage these machines to help us with this. So actually taking something that might have been a concern for people around the machines taking over, but actually turning it into a positive, leveraging the machine learning to then give the individuals access to this information to make smarter, faster, better decisions for their organizations. Some examples of this is that we're looking at data across the organization in regards to the types of skill sets that you might have amongst all of your resources today and the roles that they're in, and then projecting out what might that need to look like in the future, where are the gaps, and where might you be able to source that throughout the globe going forward. So over time, the ability for us to consume all of this information across the various different platforms that we have and compile it all together allows us to become smarter about how we're consuming this information and enabling our customers to make better business decisions. And with that, we're really, again, exploring ways in which we can help you improve, but then also make better predictions for the future. And in order to do that, we actually are focusing on these connected platforms. So what we call microservices, the ability to leverage all the different products and software systems within your organization to better enable the outcomes. So you probably have a huge technology ecosystem with lots of different applications that you're using within your finance departments, procurement departments, the business and the operations, your HR systems. But along with that, you probably also have a lot of systems that are used to conduct identity management validations, background checks, talent pooling, sourcing for resources, et cetera. And what we're focusing on at SAP is actually connecting all of those systems to help automate the input and the output across those system platforms, rather than having to move from one system and exit that system and go into another, inputting data maybe manually in one system, extracting it, and then manually putting it into another system. So we're really focusing on the connection and automation in a digital process across the various different platforms that we provide. We also have an expanding digital network, so focusing on other products and applications that various different end users will be engaging with on a day-to-day basis. And this is really helping to create a more simple, accessible, and intuitive interaction for the end users. It's giving you the ability to be more agile, to have a faster pace, and hopefully improving the overall experience. which leads us into one of the final anchors here is around the user-centric design. So we really are focusing on how are people absorbing and consuming all of these different types of technologies today. What works for individuals of these different genders and races and in different locations of the world, of different ages, and what's important to each of those different categories and the end users engaging with the technology. Ultimately, our goal is to make it simple. We want to make it easier for people to get the work done. It needs to be intuitive. It needs to fit into the way you want to work, the way the people in your organization want to work. And we all know that a lot of people are on the go. They're in a taxi, they're on the train, they're in and out of various different buildings and meetings. And as a result, they still need to have access to all of the different systems and information to run their business and to get through their day-to-day work lives. So as a result, again, we're really focusing on the connected platform with great user experiences and better data-driven insights to really help you excel into the future. And with that, we are also really starting to focus on, again, what is today's workforce to better enable those individuals that are having to leverage technology. So in today's market, access to the right talent is also a huge differentiator for organizations. So it's not just about technology, it's really also about the people. And putting the two together and having the right mix of the right skilled resources and the right software systems for them to engage and get the work done is probably one of the most single important factors that is determining an organization's success. And we know for a long time organizations have really been focusing on how do I attract and retain the right resources and top talent. And that is changing today, the dynamics of the where to find these people, the how to find these people, and the types of skills that these people have. So what the workforce looks like today is probably very different and will continue to change over time. But as a result, it's just as important to be able to engage with individual employees, but also to start focusing a bit more on your external resources and talent. And what that means to us is individuals that might be coming in as a freelancer or an independent contractor. It could be people that are provided by consulting firms, marketing agencies, people coming in to do maintenance in your building today, where you may not have considered these resources as part of your workforce, but actually they have an impact on your organization and the output of your company. The number is really starting to trend upwards in regards to these various different talent sources and the variations of the engagements across the customers that we're working with is also really starting to change. We've recently done a study with Oxford Economics just earlier this year, and their output is indicating that 44% of the workforce is actually comprised of external resources. So again, various different types of people that you're engaging with, whether it's a temporary resource for a 3 to 6 month period of time, maybe individuals that are contributing to a project-based exercise or a statement of work type milestone and deliver outcome, but there's actually consultants that are delivering the work that you may want to actually start incorporating into your workforce visibility and strategy for the future. As mentioned, these resources have various different types of skills, and in many cases, we can no longer afford to actually manage the employees and the external resources in silos. So it's more and more important for our organizations to focus on total talent and actually have a strategy on how we better engage, manage, and utilize these resources that are coming and going from your organization. So as we see here, the volume is quite significant, and in many of the conversations that we're having with the executive individuals within an organization today are asking lots of questions about, who are all these people at our company? What are they doing for us? What skills, competencies do they have? Where are they coming from, and where are they located as well? It's also important for most organizations to understand as well, what facilities are they accessing? What buildings and locations are they on and off of? And maybe even more importantly, what systems are they accessing as well? And in many cases, especially with external resources, you wouldn't always have visibility as well to how much are you paying for them, and is that the appropriate amount based on, again, the skills that they have, the location that they're performing the work. We find that to be able to answer this information, there is, again, going back to the technology and focusing on the microservices, having better connected platforms is our alignment to be able to provide better visibility to this in more real time, so that we can go back to the executive team within an organization and say, here's the information that you're looking for. And with that, it includes, again, all employees, whether it be the temporary admin down the hall or the IT consultant trying to help redesign a website or build a new app, or it could even be the outsourced staff that's maybe cleaning your offices at night. So we all know there's a lot of additional resources in and out of your organization. With that also comes a lot of different suppliers and sourcing channels, traditionally bricks and mortar staffing agencies, possibly leveraging some job boards. And what we're hearing is one of the biggest challenges still is to try and understand all of this information today with one single point of view, to be able to, again, take that information and make more meaningful strategic business decisions going forward. With that, another big trend that we're facing as a result of all of the different technologies and all of the different ways that people want to engage with organizations is a multi-channel workforce. So as mentioned in the past, a lot of organizations were really focusing on their sourcing campaigns aligned to staffing agencies, maybe recruiting campaigns, and leveraging some job boards. But ultimately today, that's completely expanded to many different sourcing channels, way beyond staffing agencies. So there's a plethora of freelance marketplaces. There's lots of different talent pools that are being built in external software systems, but also organizations building their own internal talent pools. As Tim mentioned earlier, there's a lot of individuals at an older age that may be considered an alumni, but are wanting to come back and or keep their name available to their organization to be able to come back and provide some consultative or freelance type work to that same organization or others. There's also various organizations that are focusing quite heavily on silver medalist programs. So people who maybe didn't make the first cut, but they'd be great in a slightly different role, or second time around, maybe they've upped their game and have better alignment to the needs at that point in time. So ultimately, these talent pools and talent sources need to be thought about strategically. Where are they? How do these people want to be engaged? And many of our customers are starting to revisit their approach as a result. And we're working quite closely with a lot of organizations to broaden those horizons so that they can start connecting their systems and the sourcing strategies and channels so that they're no longer just leveraging the bricks and mortar staffing agencies and usual job boards. And as a result, broadening the reach of the talent that they might have access to across the globe and really using and driving that with technology to better enable that connection to skills and talent across the world. Okay, but with that, we know that things are going fast. There's a lot of change and appetite for making things better or embracing some of the technology changes as well. And with that does come challenges. So without the right strategy, without the right policies and procedures in place, it will be probably more difficult to align to all of the different talent and technology going forward. And as a result, we're working quite heavily with our organizations that we engage with on helping them unify processes, give them better visibility, and helping them connect their systems, as we mentioned before. So these are some of the key challenges that a lot of our customers are facing. So we're not alone, but ultimately our goal is to help you overcome these challenges and really focusing in on these three areas around the visibility, inconsistencies around processes and how you're operating, and maybe not necessarily aligning with the right types of resources or being aware of the right types of skill sets or requirements for job opportunities in the future. And as a result, really starting to provide a more seamless connection to these additional channels is one of our ultimate goals. And as a result, starting to provide that better visibility across all of the different platforms that you're using today. So with that, Tim's going to talk a little bit more about what the solution components might look like, and we'll hand it back to you.
Excellent. So thank you for that, Jamie. What's really interesting at the moment, I don't know what my screen is doing here. Hang on, let's get it to stop. Right, so I want to put forth an equation, quote unquote, that I think is something that we should all consider. So think about what we've been talking about, which is there is a surplus of excellent talent, both in those who choose to be contractors, those who choose to work for you, and those who are in the middle, who do a bit of both. And the companies and the organizations that are going to win going into the next coming years are those that can find that talent, motivate that talent, and deploy it effectively. And so this equation, quote unquote, that I put forth is something that a lot of organizations are really focused on, particularly in HR right now, trying to put in place the processes, the technology to get right people, right skills, right place, right time, right motivation. And the good news is that is a lot easier to do these days than it was, say, 10 years ago, when we had on-premise HR systems, which were very clunky, very focused on compliance and people data. The new generation of cloud HR systems and cloud systems like Fieldglass are very focused on this equation, which is getting the right people, right skills, right place, right time, right motivation. And this, I would argue, and there's actually a really good case study, which I'll come on to in a moment, is the thing that's going to help solve that productivity crisis. So bringing all of the various types of workforces together and getting them in place to succeed. And call this PEIP, so people engagement, innovation, and productivity. And there's a really good case study of this in the United States from about 1992 to 2001. There was a lot of investment in organizations, but also in government to do exactly this, to get the right people, right skills, right place, so to do PEIP. And during that period, and there's great Harvard case study on this, during that period, the United States saw the biggest growth in human productivity, but also the biggest growth in GDP during that time. And those two are absolutely related. When you get increases in people's productivity, you get higher GDP, which then leads to stock market booms and those sorts of things. That's exactly what happened during that period. Unfortunately, we got away from that in the early 2000s, and this formula kind of broke up into pieces and wasn't really being used. But now a lot of organizations are coming back to it because of the new platforms that we have, the new technology that allows you to do these sorts of things. And that's essentially, really, if you think about it, this is kind of the holy grail. If you're a CEO, if you're a COO, if you're trying to execute on organization strategy, if you can do PEIP, right people, right skills, right place, right time, right motivation, you are well on your way to executing very, very well. But we're not going to just stop there. I think the other thing that we're seeing that is unique to this era, heading into 2020, is that when you take PEIP and you multiply it times emerging technology, so technologies like IBM's Watson, other smart tools, other smart technology, and even that technology that is going to be used going forward to automate, we can actually see a situation where we create historic per capita GDP growth. That, in other words, the future looks really bright. If we can get our external workforces, our internal workforces aligned according to PEIP and all marching in one direction, we can see, I think, historic growth in the future when we multiply it times the artificial intelligence and smart technology that's coming through. So I'm going to hand back to Jamie for another poll. Jamie, over to you. Are you there, Jamie?
Hello, can you hear me? Good old technology. So we want to engage with our audience again and see how is this resonating with you. Many of you have different types of programs and HR strategies in place today, and we are just wanting to have a quick check. How many of you are actually managing and focusing on both your internal and external resources at this point in time? We'll give you a few moments here, just a few options to choose from, and we'll take a look at the results in just a minute. All right, let's see what the audience has to say here. Hopefully the results are in. Can I ask my support team to help me out with that? Okay, so we've got a bit of a split here. So just over 40% of the participants today are focusing just on their internal employee resources in regards to their workforce management today, and around another 40% that are actually focusing on both their internal and external. So quite some sway here in the poll, but ultimately, as you've heard now, our focus really as a technology provider to our customers is to include both the internal and external into what we call a total workforce management program. And with that, as you've heard throughout our webinar today, it's really taking all of the information about the talent and the resources that are engaging with your organization, whether they're employees on your payroll or not, to provide you with the inclusion of that information so that you have more visibility across the board. You can make more meaningful insights about different gaps that you might have or demand planning that you might be focusing on for the years to come, or new locations or areas of business that you're wanting to pursue, and what type of resources will it take to actually allow you to go after that. And with that, the ability to then have access to data and more meaningful information to start to carry out those plans and start to execute on that strategy, and further optimize the performance of people within your organization. And finally, giving you access to different channels to better engage with all different resources aligned to the outcomes of your company. And, I know even at SAP, we have a program called SAP Talk, for example, and instead of waiting for a 6-month or an annual performance review, we're really encouraged to actually have conversations with our peers and our management team on an ongoing basis. We have lots of different social platforms where we can share ideas, we can collaborate, we can look at different learning opportunities and have better visibility into the different career paths and aspirations of the organization for the future. So when we take a holistic approach from some statistics, again, going back to the Oxford Economics studies, what they have found is that 42% of executives say that the contingent workforce, so the external workforce, is really starting to change the way they're focusing on the workforce strategy. So as very similar statistic as to what we saw in the polls just now. Yeah, in 2018, so far, only 19% strongly agree that their organization has that total talent strategy either thought up or in place to really encompass all of the employees that are coming and going and involved within your organization. So quite a significant gap here. And ultimately, we want you to kind of take a step back and look at your whole workforce and start to think hopefully about things a little bit differently going forward. And ultimately, the SAP SuccessFactors and SAP Fieldglass organizations and software platforms are really making a drive and focusing on putting people at the heart of what we call an intelligent enterprise transformation. So connecting systems to be able to help you better connect people. We have obviously various other platforms that are aligned to this intelligence suite as well, so that then as a result, the underlying digital platform gives you access to all the different types of information to help you drive those data points and decisions moving forward. And ultimately, going back to some of Tim's trends or statistics actually from the beginning of our webinar, there's a lot of change that's happening around how people are engaging with technology, the social network and interaction with apps, and how that's all connected in a much bigger environment called the Internet of Things. And as a result, we're really focusing, again, on some intelligent systems that we can also provide our customers to help take away some of the burden in regards to engaging via your traditional laptop or desktop in an office. Voice-activated requests for information, requests for steps within a transaction, and really leveraging machine learning to start to bring to you talent that might align to your requirements rather than you having to go search for it, and really starting to apply some mathematical formulas, algorithms, to all of the data sets running across the Intelligence Suite platform to, again, be able to provide you with information to really help you focus on how to make better business decisions going forward. So with that, I think we wanted to finalize our conversation today to just indicate how we are connected as two products, and we have these standardized integrations between systems, and all the plumbing is in place so that hopefully as an end result for our customers, they can focus more on the bigger picture and really be equipped to be more agile, to help spark motivation improve how they're engaging with resources across the board, and be confident in how they're tackling their tough challenges and or people issues today, and really starting to build bridges across not just the platforms that they're working with, but across the people and their organization. So I think at this point in time, we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that the audience may have. And thank you for listening, and take a moment to hear what our participants have to say.
If anyone has any questions about the webinar or about SuccessFactors or Fieldglass, then just pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom and we will answer them all for you. We have a few coming in right now. Bear with me, I'm just trying to load them. So this is a question to Jamie. How does the payment solution work for Fieldglass?
That can be quite complicated depending on what part of the world the resources are in. But ultimately, the SAP Fieldglass application focuses on managing the external resources and the assignment details aligned to the different rates that they should be paid or any other types of allocations for their services. We have timesheet functionality that then leverages details of that resource on their assignment, aligned to the sourcing channel, the location, and the rate structure as a result, that ultimately then allows us to calculate out the payment types for the payments for the individuals. But generally speaking, that information is then sent to other systems for processing. So again, going back to connected platforms as a solution. And the devil's in the details there, so we're certainly happy to dig into that further offline if necessary.
Yeah, great. And another question coming in saying, is SAP SuccessFactors and SAP Fieldglass integrated with one another?
The simple answer is yes, absolutely. There are some productized integrations. So what that means is pre-built and developed in-house within SAP. We have focused on some of the key transactional touch points between systems from the starting point of I've planned out all the different types of positions that I'm expecting to fulfill, and then kicking off the actual request process that might go down the path of I want to engage with external resources and or internal resources, so that requisition can live both in the SuccessFactors and or Fieldglass application, and the data is passed via an integration. And then also all of the external resource records from the assignments are then passed back to the SuccessFactors Employee Central platform, which then allows us to have learning and training plans triggered in the SuccessFactors application as well. And then ultimately, with a more holistic view of who are all these people, visibility from an organizational structure as to how they, all the talent sits across the org structure, and then also from a workforce analytics reporting perspective, the integrations are in place and available.
Right. Okay. we have lots of integration questions. Another question is, which modules of SuccessFactors currently have a seamless integration and allow Fieldglass contingent workers to be further engaged? When we talk about talent pools, is this the SuccessFactors talent pool, or is there another talent pool functionality in Fieldglass?
Oh, that's a good question. And Tim, feel free to jump in here at any point in time as well. Ultimately, there are talent searches and talent pooling capabilities, I believe, in both the SuccessFactors and Fieldglass platforms, leveraged potentially for different purposes. But ultimately, because we feed the worker records from Fieldglass into SuccessFactors Employee Central, you can also then search for all of the resources via the SuccessFactors platform as well in that talent pool as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I think maybe that's a component of the answer. I don't know if I hit it all, but yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, essentially, those customers who have both platforms, just to give you a feel of what it looks like overall. Essentially, you get a full capability to talent manage and deploy both your internal and external. So those integrations are seamless, and essentially you get a view of external and internal across the whole employee life cycle, right? From recruitment through to performance management, through to learning and certifications, those sorts of things. And that's been the vision when we acquired Fieldglass, was to give that capability to essentially be able to talent manage external and internal in exactly the same way, using the same data, et cetera.
Perfect. What AI products, so what artificial intelligence products are you introducing to help with staff matching? I don't know if there's one.
Good question. Okay. I see it on the screen here because I think I lost the end of the statement. But ultimately, we are focusing on, I would say, machine learning, the use of machine learning, to be able to sift through CVs, resource profiles, and or skills, qualifications, certifications aligned to the individual's profiles, to then allow you to do two things. One, when searching in the talent pool, have more enriched results. And two, from a external resource engagement perspective, at the beginning stages of your request, we are actually proactively presenting you with individuals that might actually match the different requirements for the opportunity using machine learning, so that you might start to consider resources that you've engaged with previously before you go back out to your multi-sourcing channels. So that's kind of stage one. We're also using machine learning to look at individuals who are applying or have been submitted for the opportunities, starting to rank their CVs and their profiles to highlight to the manager or the recruiter, who kind of fits the bill the best based on the data aligned to the requirement. Obviously, there's still the human element of wanting to probably get engaged and make sure that they're the right fit. Culturally, they're aligned to the organization as well. So it's really looking at the data aligned to the requirements to do the staff matching.
Yeah.
The other feature we have is something we call business beyond bias. So, for instance, we use machine learning to review job postings, job roles, et cetera, to sort of strip out any gender or ethnicity bias. Very, very clever tool that is basically like a spell check that comes back and gives you suggestions on changing certain things in a posting that you might give, both for external and internal, because it's found that if you can take some of the gender and other bias out of these things, you get much better candidates, much better matched candidates, because we all have our own subconscious biases, and basically we're using machine learning and automation to strip that out, which is proving to be very successful, and continues to build its learning of that as well.
Perfect. So we might just have more time for one last question, and maybe this is one for you, Jamie. So how does SAP Fieldglass improve the quality of the workforce?
Good question. I think there's a lot of different dynamics that might go into that answer. In general, I think that, again, just first of all, having better visibility to the individual, the different skills, qualifications, certifications that they have. Also, I think that we, again, are starting to connect those individuals to other different social platforms and learning opportunities that they may not have had access to in the past. So starting to give them, elevated experiences within the gig or the contract time period that they're working. Or maybe just two examples. I don't know, Tim, if there's anything else that you might want to add to the question as well.
No, I think you covered that well.
Okay. Well, we didn't get to all the questions, unfortunately, but we will make sure to follow up after the podcast with any other questions that we didn't get to today. Again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you joining today, and hopefully it was useful. Thanks, everyone.